So in part 2 of the Excel tutorial, we're going to look at a more complicated data set. This is some data collected in a mouse study where the mice were receiving two different diets with and without a particular drug that affected lipid metabolism. So what we're going to cover in this tutorial is how to clean up the data a little, organize it in such a way that we can then calculate the mean of each of the variables, glucose, cholesterol, triglycerides, HDL cholesterol, and non-HDL cholesterol for each of the treatment groups. And then we will display the cholesterol means in the form of a bar chart. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is sort the file. We have 31 entries for under mouse ID, which means there were 31 individual mice, and they were allocated to either treatments 1, 2, 3, or 4. So for us to sort this now, rather than having the file sorted as mouse ID number, we want to sort according to treatment number. So to do this, you want to select the entire data set. Make sure everything has been highlighted and nothing extra put in. And once you've done that, then you move over to the editing tab and you select sort and filter. And you want to do a custom sort. You'll get a box that looks something like this, and make sure if you've selected row 1, row 1, that you say my data has headers, because that's what these are, headers, indicating what the data is. So if your data has headers, when you go to the sort by column, you'll see that they're actually listed there. So we are going to select sort by treatment. We want it sort on values, and we want to go from smallest to largest. But we're going to add a second level because we want to keep the order of the mouse IDs as they are. So to do that, you would add a level, and then you would say sort by mouse ID from smallest to largest. So what this will now do is sort everything by treatment first, and then sort it again within treatment by mouse ID. So once you've done it, you select OK, and you can see that the data has changed slightly. And now you have all the mice in treatment 1 are grouped together with all of their data. It's very important that you select all the data, as I just explained to you. If you don't select all the data and you run through the sort filter, anything that hasn't been selected will not be sorted. So if you just select column 1 for mouse ID and change and go through the sort filter process that I just said, the mouse ID will change. However, the rest of the data will stay in the position that it was in before, meaning now that your data, your mouse IDs, have now moved away from the data that you're meaning to move with it in the sort process. So be very careful that everything is selected that you want to sort, because then it arranges everything it keeps everything that within the same row allocated to the same set of data. Now that we have sorted the data by treatment, we're going to separate out some of this data so we can add in the mean of each of these variables just below. So to do that, you would select the first mouse in treatment 2. You can right click and then you would insert, and it knows you're going to insert a row once you've selected the entire row. So we're going to do that 3 times. Actually, we're going to do that 4 times. So now we've got 4 blank spaces. So we're going to repeat that again at the top of mouse number 3's group. And once more at mouse number 4, or sorry, at treatment number 4's group. Okay, now we've got some blank spaces here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to type in here under mouse ID, just so we can keep everything straight what we're doing. We're going to type in mean, then we're going to type in SD for standard deviation, and then we're going to type in SEM for standard error of the mean, and then copy that on to to the rest. Okay, so now as in the last tutorial, we're just basically going to calculate here directly under glucose, and in line with row 10 for mean, we're going to calculate the average glucose. So again, you type in equals and start the word average, and you'll get the autocomplete, and you select all the data, press enter, and here you go. So you can see that we're not formatted for the appropriate number of decimal places, and even the data itself up here has not been formatted for the appropriate number of decimal places, but I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. So I've calculated mean for glucose. Now, as we said in Excel tutorial number 1, you don't have to repeat the process, you just drag the formula along, and you can see that it now calculates for all the data above for each of the variables. Okay, so I just said I was going to help you or show you a way to fix the decimal places, because we're not going to report decimal places to the fourth data to the fourth decimal place at any point in time, especially when we're only measuring something to the first decimal place. So what we'll do is we'll select the variables which are going to be one decimal place, which is going to be glucose, cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, and non-HDL cholesterol. Select them all, and then adjust with the decimal place number adjustment buttons here. We'll do the same thing. And then for triglycerides, we're going to have 2 decimal places. Okay, so that's all done. Now, the next step is to calculate the standard deviation. I'm showing you how to calculate standard deviation here. We would usually not use standard deviation in this type of data set, but I'm not going to go into why. But to calculate standard deviation is very simple. You just type in, again, the equal sign, and then ST, DEV. You'll get a couple of options depending on what version of Excel you're using. Most of you will see STDEV, which stands for standard deviation. You'll double click, and then you select all the data, but not including the mean that you've previously calculated. Once you've done that, you select enter, and then there is your standard deviation of this data. So again, adjust it for decimal places. So we're looking for 1 decimal place here, and then again drag across so that you've calculated it for all the data above. You can adjust the triglyceride decimal places here as well at this point. So now we're going to calculate the standard error of the mean, which is a more appropriate value for looking at the variability of the data. The standard error of the mean is the standard deviation divided by the square root of the number of samples. So in this case, we have 8 samples. However, not all groups have 8 mice. You can see here that treatment number 4 only has 7 mice listed for its data. So we'll address that in a few minutes. You'll see why it's important in a couple of minutes that I brought that up. So to do this particular procedure, you could either type in equals, select C11 because we've just calculated the standard deviation, then select divide, then you type in the function to get square root, which is SQ, and here you go, you can see it right here, square root. You double click square root, you'll get the option now to insert the number of which you want the square root of, and like I said, in this case it's 8. Type in 8, close bracket, press enter, and you've generated the standard error of the mean for this data set. So now adjust the decimal places and drag across. So make sure your decimal places are all appropriate. Remember, triglycerides needs 2 decimal places. So now you have your standard errors calculated. I said there was another way to do it because you could actually bypass and skip the step where you calculate the standard deviation. So I'll just show you quickly how to do that. What you would do is, instead of selecting C11, you would actually perform the standard deviation calculation function here, where you would type in STDEV, get the autocomplete, double click, and then it's looking for the data set that you want to use. You use the original data for each individual mouse, not the mean that you calculated, and then close the bracket. Once you've done that, you can either hit the check mark here or press enter, and you can see you get the same number, 1.3. And this would then work again just the same as you drag across and calculate. Okay? That is the more appropriate way to do it, because that would be a good example. Actually, if you see here, we got a different number coming back to us under triglyceride, because it was using the rounded number for standard deviation when it calculated, and this, when it recalculated it based on the formula we just put in, you get a different value. And this is the more appropriate way to do it, the second step that I showed you. Okay, so now do we have to repeat all that again and again? No, we do not. What you can do is you can select one set here, right click, copy, select the empty cell for the mean of the treatment number 2, right click and say paste. You've pasted it in, and now if you want to just double check, you can see that it's selecting C14 to C21 to C21. So it's because you've copied and pasted it, it's copied the formula which says take the preceding 8 cells and calculate the mean. Same goes for your standard deviation, and the same goes for the formula for the square root. So now all you have to do is select all of these again, take the small square in the corner, drag across, and now you've calculated your mean, your standard deviation, your standard error of the mean. So you can do the same thing again, copy, paste, and drag across. Now, this is where my mentioning earlier that there was only 7 mice listed here in treatment number 4. So what you can do is you can still copy, still paste. However, you need to go in and edit each of these. So we need to go from C38 down to C44. So you just go in and you edit it right here. So you can either do it by selecting here and actually just clearing this out and changing it to 38. So enter, and then the same here, 38, enter, and again 38, enter. Now that you've done that, now you drag across. Okay, so we've calculated mean, standard deviation, standard error of the mean. And now I said we were going to put in a bar graph, and in this bar graph we're going to ignore the glucose and triglycerides for now, and what we're going to do is we're going to graph the cholesterol value. So this is total cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, and non-HDL cholesterol. And so to do that, we're going to go up to Insert. Under Charts, we're going to insert here where it says Insert Column Chart. Open up the drop-down box. We're going to insert a simple 2-dimensional column chart, and like in the last tutorial, you get the blank canvas for the chart area. So we right-click in the chart area, select data. So what are we going to do here? We're going to add in the series that we're going to enter. So we add in number 1. What's the series name? In this particular case, we are going to be adding 4 series. Each series represents the mean of each treatment group. So they're not imaginatively named, they're just 1, 2, 3, and 4, but we'll select them just so we can keep everything straight as we make these charts. So this is series 1, and the values for series 1, here is what we're going to do. We're going to select, sorry, I just made a mistake there. We're not going to select all that data. We're going to select the mean for cholesterol. Then we're going to hold the control button down so we can do a multiple select. And we're also going to select HDL cholesterol, and we're going to select non-HDL cholesterol. And then you say OK. And you say OK again. we've got series number 1, which represents treatment number 1, but then we've got 1, 2, and 3, which actually are representing the 3 cholesterol values that we just selected. So we're going to need to edit this so we can keep these things straight. So we're going to say edit, and the range we're going to use, we're going to do the same thing. Select cholesterol, hold down the control button, then select HDL, and then select non-HDL. Say OK, and you can see that the x-axis has already changed behind us. Okay, so that's treatment 1. Now we want to add in the next treatment, which is treatment number 2. So we add a new series. This is called treatment 2. And then we add the same data. We do it the same way. Selecting the mean for cholesterol, holding control, and selecting the other HDL and non-HDL cholesterol. Say OK. You can see the bar graphs are starting to appear. Then just repeat, add. And add the last one for number 4. And that's it, we're done. So if we roll back up here, we can see that we've generated the bar chart. So the concentrations, so let's delete these grid lines because I do not like them. And we'll add some axis titles. So this is concentration. It's the same units of concentration for all the cholesterol, so we will just type in concentration. And we will put in brackets millimole per liter, close bracket. And the axis title on the bottom is unnecessary, so we can actually delete it because we've labeled each of the sets of bar graphs. So let's delete that. Now you'll see here that we're missing an axis, so we'll better add that in, and that's underneath the option for chart elements. And so we need to address the axes. We want more options, and we want to we want the line, which would be under here. So under fills and lines, we want a solid line for that axis. Sorry, I've got the wrong axis selected actually. We need to select the primary vertical axis, and we want a solid line. And there you go. You can see the solid line's been added. Now I'm going to show you one more thing, and that's how you add the standard error bars on a graph. This is important, especially when you go forward and do your dissertations and you're reporting your data. You're going to need to include the standard error or standard deviation, depending on the type of data, for whichever data you've collected. So this is an easy way to do it. We've already selected, or calculated, sorry, what the standard error of the mean is for each of these. And so it's very similar to what we just did in terms of holding control and selecting the data to produce this graph. So what we do first is we select the entire series. So we're starting first with treatment 1. Then we're going to edit the chart elements. Again, if you're using an earlier version of Microsoft Office, the options are the same name, but you'll find them here at the top versus here on the side of the graph. So I'm going to select error bars. Then I'm going to open it up for more options. What we're going to do is, because this is a bar chart, we don't want both. We just want the plus. We want a cap, and we select custom for the data. Then we have to specify the values. So what is our positive value that we're going to use? Well, it's the standard error of the mean, and we want to select it for cholesterol, then hold down control, HDL cholesterol, non-HDL cholesterol. So now it knows to assign each of these standard errors to each of the subsequent blue bars representing treatment 1. You say OK, and let's just close this so you can get a look and see how it appears. So now you can see the error bars are attached to each, and they're the appropriate error associated with the appropriate cholesterol which was measured. So I'll repeat that again just so you can see it. For treatment number 2, error bars selected, more options, plus only, cap, custom, specify values. Then you navigate yourself to the data, selecting standard error for cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, non-HDL cholesterol, holding control to do that. Say OK. Roll and take a look. You can see the error bars are selected. So that ends tutorial number 2. So that is cleaning up data, calculating mean, standard deviation, standard error of the mean, and then beginning a graph. In this case, it's a bar graph or column graph, as Excel refers to it. Then inputting the error bars. So that concludes tutorial number 2.